Hello everybody and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be ranking and taking a look at the edge rushers we'll be seeing in the 2025 NFL draft. I've done every position up to this point, my last video being the defensive lineman rankings, and I've done every single offensive position including the lineman that's already up on my channel. So if you guys want to go find that, it'll be easy to find. I also have a playlist with it on the channel. Without further ado, let's head into this video talking about our number one defensive end, and tied at the number one spot with 1A is James Pearce Jr. I'm sure everyone expected this. Tennessee's edge rusher heading into his junior year, listed a little bit smaller at 242 pounds, but he's still tall at 6'5". And we'll start with the obvious. Everything looks so fluid and subtle for Pearce, like everything. He'll be doing something so calmly while everyone else would be so animated. It looks like they're trying real hard. For him, it's business as usual. He's just going through it, just going through the motions calmly. And like I said, looks subtle and easy for him. Can't talk about James Pearce without talking about his quick first step, and he can get lateral with those first few steps too. You better watch out because he does fire off the line, but he can also go from left to right or left or right. You know, you never know with James Pearce. The movement is great off the line, and that first few steps really can catch an offensive lineman out of sorts. He always keeps his legs moving. Now it sounds like a running back note, like something you jot down when watching a running back, but it applies for James too. During his rush, he never settles and keeps the legs churning, and that's something, like I said, you talk about with running backs to keep your momentum up and whatnot. You just do it because you'd like to get the extra yards. James Pearce, it just stood out that he just kept churning the legs, and it was something that I hadn't been watching. A lot of guys would like anchor down, but James Pearce not really that sort of player, and instead chose to keep his legs moving and keep that push going. Pearce can actually win outside with speed and power. He can go through you with a bull rush with some of the built up I guess momentum he'd have from the outside. He can also slice inside, squeeze through inside gaps, juke you almost, do some stutter moves, whatever it is that just works on the inside. If you want to stretch the offensive lineman outside and then go back and attack that inside shoulder once he's got enough space, he's got the get off in the first few steps to do so, and he's also got the power working for him as well, so it keeps the offensive lineman guessing. And stunt rushes are a huge strong suit for James. He'll fly around any which direction and can beat you with speed or build speed and hit you hard with some of that speed to power, if you will. But the way that he moves and then can basically lay up, get off the line, and what I mean kind of by layup, I should kind of clarify, the ball is snapped and he kind of stands up, he lays off, he's not really doing much, and then all of a sudden he switches gears, directions, and flies around, and he's all that just to build up some speed to either fly around an offensive lineman or try to go through him. When using speed to power, he just needs a couple of steps to build enough speed then to use and deliver his power. When you talk about guys that use speed to power, and we've been talking about it all video long, it's a lot of build up and then kind of deliverance, if you will. But James Pearce needs two steps. He goes flying right into him. It's just basically a bull rush with maybe an extra step for James Pearce, and it's more than enough to be considered speed to power because of the way he converts such little I guess area into enough power to push an offensive lineman back. And I'm going to sound crazy here, but he actually took some nice coverage snaps, but it gets crazier. He looked really fluid and comfortable when dropping back and reading the field and staying in zone. I don't know if he has a pass playing linebacker anywhere, but I would not be surprised if he played over the middle of the field at one point in his career. He looked like fluid and, like I said, really comfortable and pretty calm in those sort of situations where he's dropping back, reading the field, staying in some of the open spaces. And now we'll get to the downside with James Pearce, and I may have a little bit more notes than you'd expect, but he plays with good power, but it comes with building up momentum and using that power and leverage. He's just a tad bit light. Some guys can fire right off the line with power, just use power rush moves. For James Pearce, it's almost always building momentum and using that power and leverage. So he's more of a bottom to top guy that needs a little extra to do a little of the power stuff. So he's just a tad bit light. He's not one to manhandle anyone really straight off the line. And in his game against Alabama, Tennessee and Alabama game, JC Latham had Pearce's number in that game. It was kind of it was fun to watch because I had watched Pearce against some not so great tackles, and then you see JC Latham and where he went in the NFL draft this past year. To see him against that caliber was nice. And then JC Latham, obviously known for his power and the way that he can anchor down, and it really worked against Pearce, and when he switched over to I think it was Proctor, he was pretty good. And when I say pretty good, I mean like pretty damn good. And then when he saw Latham, it was just kind of a struggle for him. And what actually is interesting, and I'm curious if it changes, but he missed a lot of plays. Plus, he didn't even start games for Tennessee. I'd fire up the tape, the first play on defense, he's not even on the field. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. People down below, if you're a Tennessee fan, let me know, because I am a little intrigued by this, and I didn't think to go deeper, you know, Google-wise or anything like that. But it just was a little weird. And then he took actually a lot of time off the field as well and saw the sideline a bit more, which was a little interesting. Like I said, I'm curious if it changes in this upcoming season. But James Pearce Jr., my edge rusher 1A, and we're getting to 1B right now, someone I'm probably higher on than average consensus. And at 1B, it is Nic Scourton, the Purdue transfer, heading to Texas A&M for his junior season. And he is an inch smaller than James Pearce, but 280 pounds. He's a crazy versatile player. He can take snaps inside like a defensive tackle, or even drop into coverage like a linebacker if need be. And he did that plenty. He actually took a lot of coverage snaps, to my surprise. He wasn't like really the best, but we'll hop into more of that conversation in the downside of Nic Scourton. There really wasn't a whole lot of downside with this player. He's insane. Crazy movement skills. How the freak does 280 pounds move so fast, bend like that, and actually do it all so fluidly? I don't get it. I don't think people are high enough on Nic Scourton for this exact reason. If you want to point at athletes and freaks and say they have high upside and potential because of that, well, you look at Nic Scourton, we'll hop into more of what he does well, but he does so much well. He's crazy versatile, and he's a freak of nature the way he moves. Throw all that aside, I still see him as an even higher upside than, I don't know, like I just haven't heard Scourton's name a whole lot in terms of, you know, one of the best players in this class, and I actually have that viewpoint on him. I love Nic Scourton and the freak that he is. He actually kind of reminds me of a brick, but more like if you're dropping it off like a 5-story building, and he doesn't move when you hit it. So think of a brick wall in that, you know, fact right there. And then, like I said, when you drop a brick off the 5-story building or whatever, if it builds momentum, you're not catching it. And it's the same sort of thing here. When Nic Scourton has power and momentum on his side, you are not blocking him. He is going to go right through you, and he has 280 pounds tacked on behind him with all the power he's using. And honestly, I don't think that a whole lot of tackles in the country could take Nic Scourton one-on-one in an island when he has 3, maybe 4 yards of a runway. Though Nic's big and powerful, he can still fly outside and fight for the outside with his natural athleticism blended with some of the violent hands that he has when you want to fight outside. And what I kind of meant by the natural athleticism, and then blend that with some of the hands, the way that he can get outside and attack the outside shoulder of a tackle. Normally you don't see 280 pounds do that. Normally you try to go through him in those sort of situations, but no, instead he's going around and he's trying to bat the hands. He's trying to use some of the violence that he has in his hands to capture the edge, to get around and beat the offensive tackle that way. Well, he's still 280 pounds. He's also a player with tremendous and great effort. He's really never out of the play. There's plenty of reps where you'd assume he's not going to be involved. He's too far wrong, and then proves you wrong, and he ends up somehow getting a partial tackle, or he's in the dog pile where the play, or where the end of the play results. And the downside with Scourton, I do like the ability he has to play some coverage snaps and drop back 5 yards or whatever it is, but it takes away from him being able to wreck the play. Most of the time, his underneath coverage snaps are kind of just wasting his talent on the defensive line. Like, if he's not taking the flat or someone that's actually there, then bring him back in on the line. Like, don't tell him to just sit out there and, like I said, kind of waste it down instead of him being able to create pressure or collapse the pocket. Either which way, there are plays that he just kind of wastes out there in no man's land. And there's also a few times I saw where he loses sight of the player, gets too involved and a little scrambled in traffic and can't really find his way out. A lot of these guys did the same thing, but like I said, never really out of the play, great effort, and so he kind of drives that all into one, and sometimes gets too involved or like I said, a little scrambled or mixed up in traffic, which is normal almost. He's a really good player, someone I'll be eyeing as time moves on for people to really pick up on how good he is. If not, no trouble. I have no problem being the high man on Scourton. I have a lot of money on this guy doing really well. Jokingly, of course. Next on this list is Penn State's Abdul Carter, moving from a linebacker where he played last year to edge rusher for his junior season at Penn State. Also bulked up, listed at 259 pounds now, listed at 6'3" as well for his height. And that's huge too, because last year he was in the 250-pound realm playing linebacker, which was already huge, and he moved so well for that size. So I'm curious how much power and mass he tacks on here, and I guess just muscle for Abdul Carter moving to 259 pounds. And I think the big first thing to talk about here is he brings his linebacker play style and instincts to the edge position. He can help in run defense, and it helps plugging gaps and whatnot, and having that kind of perspective and, like I said, kind of linebacker play style and instincts that he had. I mean, he was a very high level linebacker, and so you add that to his skill set off the edge and it just makes him better in run defense, and like I said, could help him overall instinctually wise and understanding where the play could go. He's got a great first step and acceleration, whether it's off the edge or on a blitz. He easily has the edge and the element of surprise on any offensive lineman when you're looking at, does he have an edge on him? Does he have a trump card per se? And yes, I do think he does. It's great off the line, and like I said, he was doing that last year, and he's built so well. If he's really 250 pounds last year, that he moves like that at 250, like it's just all freakish to me. Great speed and bend to the outside. He can really beeline for the outside shoulder, and once he's past that shoulder, he starts to bend and then collapse in on the quarterback, whatever you want to say there. But he does a really great job to get attacking to the outside, whether it was on a blitz or if it's just him meant to be taking a guy on the edge, just taking a tackle on an island to help his teammates inside. He did it well, and he was also winning in those scenarios when he's just supposed to be kind of distracting an extra tackle, taking a lineman off the line pretty much. Flashes speed to power with some of his blitzes in the way he runs in, doesn't care, and tries to just go through the blocker. And that's one thing that is a little underdeveloped in his game, the strength through his arms that kind of funnel and tunnel through the rest of his body. A lot of guys can translate or mix their bottom end torque to their upper half, and the way that they kind of inflict power and whatnot. Abdul Carter wasn't really the same. He more ran straight in and just kind of put his hands out. So he'll have to develop that and then figuring out some more of the leverage. But the way I said that he flashes some of the speed to power, showed raw talent and ability off the edge when he was playing a little bit of edge against Maryland, not Maryland. He was showing like a nice spin move, hesitations, just the ability to work off the edge and the ability to produce and, you know, make pressure and whatnot off of the edge. He was doing that last year as a linebacker in the few snaps he played, and there was actually a period where, like, towards the end of that Maryland game, it's almost like a trial at edge rusher for him, and he did a really good job. The tough thing is too, not a whole lot of his game right now translates to the edge rushing position, so you have to kind of piece it together like a puzzle almost, kind of take aspects of his game that he was doing as a linebacker and putting it and kind of, well, asking yourself, how does this translate and what does that mean pretty much? He just had light feet and kind of a lighter base, and you kind of look at him at 6'3", 250, where he was listed last year. I don't think he was 250 last year. He looked a little bit more thin, maybe like 245 at most. I don't know about 250, and if he was 250, he holds 250 like ridiculously well, but the light feet and base definitely stood out as a linebacker getting moved off his spot and whatnot. So I'm curious how that kind of translates and if it takes some time off the edge to adjust, and we'll see kind of his best anchor towards the end of this upcoming season. And last and not least, it's like, can't go overstated here, but the position transition that he's in shows a real lack of polish everywhere. I kind of already talked about it with the speed to power, how he kind of just runs up and puts his arms out in hopes that that's going to work instead of really hand placement, keeping leverage, staying low. Like, there's not a whole lot of that in his game. Maybe develop some pass rush moves over this next year, over this offseason perhaps. You can kind of look at Abdul Carter and see a real lack of polish and how it might not work out on the edge to start with, and how much he might have to build to be a very high caliber and maybe one of the top picks in this draft. That's a reason he is a little bit lower. And like I said, a lot of projection involved with this one because of the switch from linebacker to edge, but I'm more than willing to bet on the type of athlete and human that is Abdul Carter, freak human being. Next guy we have here, more of a polarizing prospect, actually. It's Mykel Williams, Georgia's junior edge rusher, standing at 6'5", 265 pounds, a lot bigger. And he's very versatile as far as an edge rusher goes, like alignments wise. I truly think he could play across the line, but he took snaps from 4I, which is just inside the tackle, to all the way out to a wide 9, which, like I said, I think he could play across the line realistically, but took snaps from 4I all the way out to wide 9. He's got a true power presence, and he's a true power rusher. He can win with his strength and go through blocks. It's quite apparent on his tape that there's just a true, like I said, power presence in the way that he wins. It's very power related, I guess. Another thing that's fairly apparent when watching Mykel Williams along with some of the other guys in this class, the high motor player and rusher that he is doesn't stop his power rush, or doesn't stop his rush, but and also doesn't stop when he's like on an outside pass or whatever and he thinks he's in reach. He'll run after it even if he doesn't get there. He's just a high motor player. The size and the length stood out and helps him a lot with his long arm move and the bull rush, which is, the long arm is basically a one arm bull rush and the bull rush is two-hand long arm. Think of it that way, the way that he was able to leverage, and like I said, the length and the overall size and weight Mykel Williams had behind him was really useful on some of the long arm and bull rush moves. I thought the movement skills were pretty impressive for a guy his size. I don't think he's an alien or like really bendy or anything crazy like that, but he still just moves really well in the way that he does a stunt rush or something like that. Weird note, but he had a knack for like deflecting passes. I don't know, maybe the long arms, maybe the high motor awareness, all that helps there, but like I said, kind of a weird note, not something you typically hear, but he just like had a knack for defending some of the passes and deflecting some of them. Now we get to some of the downside here. One-dimensional power rusher. He doesn't really reach outside his bag and try to get fancy. He's more power, and that's pretty much it. Has good rep after good rep. Just never really stood out on the stat sheet though. There was a lack of production in his game, and like I said, on paper there wasn't a whole lot there for Mykel Williams. I was looking at his games and I was like, well, I don't know. He's not really that great. He was actually one of the first guys I watched. I think he was like the third or fourth guy I watched. And a lot of that was because like I just didn't know what to expect. I knew some of the intangibles were there right away. The production would have led you to some of the conclusions that he wasn't so great. So I'm not really sure what's going on production wise, but I watched the tape and he's really good. Same pass rush moves most of the time. He's got the swim, long arm, and bull rush, and occasionally changes up to some more powerful hand related moves. Maybe the swipe in there. Maybe you want to chop or whatever it is, but most of the time you're just looking at the three same ones, and two of them are basically the same move. One of them just a subset of the bull rush, which is the long arm. Maybe, like I said, change up, maybe work outside, maybe expand some of that arsenal if you're Mykel Williams, and really try to get not fancy, but I don't know, be less broad, get more out there, figure it out this upcoming season, show and display a little bit more. That'd be sick. Looking at the size, 6'5", 265, you'd expect Mykel to have some action against the run, but no, he wasn't doing much in the run game. Never really stood out in those sort of situations either. Even if he was on the same side that the run was going to, he wasn't even a great run defender. So something he can improve on this upcoming season, and needs to just develop and progress against the run some more, and he can end up, you know, on the top or towards the top of this list, right up there with Abdul Carter if he does progress tremendous, take huge strides, which is more of a projection for him to do so. I don't think right now, like I know there's some guys in this class that like the floor is a little bit higher, but Mykel Williams has a nice power floor to him, but can expand so much and has still great upside despite being like just a really good power rusher. I think he could make his game a little bit more, or expand his game a little bit more, make it more overall all the way around, especially against the run. We've got the first Ohio State edge rusher up on this list. It's actually defensive end Jack Sawyer, heading into his senior year, listed at 6'5", 260 pounds. And that is 6'5", 260 pounds of straight power. He'll rip through you, he'll hit you hard, and he'll push you around. He's just a little bit of a roughhouser. I'd hate to be in a mosh pit with Jack Sawyer. I would get stomped. This dude looks like a Marine and acts like one on the field too. He plays every snap through the whistle, and the coach doesn't have to tell him to hustle at all. Shouldn't have to. Jack Sawyer, like I said, looks like one. Go look at a picture of Jack Sawyer. Tell me his father wasn't a Marine or something, or even in the force somewhere. I don't know, but Jack Sawyer looks like, you know, if football doesn't really work out, I he'll get accepted just sending in a headshot. Moves well as far as size goes and everything you hear on him. Sure, he's not super bendy and not an athlete, but still gets from A to B, you know, pretty well. But like I said, you hear him or you hear about him and it's like high floor, good effort, good power, but I still thought he moved like decent. And he's actually good in run defense too. Sawyer plays with good effort and fights through contact to defend the run, and not a whole lot of it is like game-changing plays or big TFLs that stand out on tape. A lot of it is just like, okay, that's a solid play against the run, or all right, that was a good job like finding the ball and tackling the ball carrier. So I do like Jack Sawyer in some of the run defense areas. Short-lived pros, and we'll head to the cons here. He's a little top heavy at times. A lot goes into his rep. So when you look at more of a power guy, they are typically a lot of like the top heavy type of players where they're going into the pads and they're really trying to drive you back, and that's just your job as an edge rusher. But when you're against a savvy and a little bit more experienced offensive tackle, maybe they receive that a little bit better, or maybe they manipulate you in the way that you know, your power would lend them to do so, I guess. I don't know. Definitely could use some polish on his pass rush. He's firing off the line. It doesn't do anything real technical. It just kind of fights through blocks and just, like I said, real power and straight power. It's not like he's sitting there with finesse or batting the hands down, or like I said, doing anything real technical. It's just, you know, fighting his way to the quarterback. And this one kind of ties into the last one, lack of diversity with his pass rush moves. I normally take notes on moves that guys are using, and, you know, maybe use the bull rush or a club move. That's what stood out with Jack Sawyer. But most of these guys, you know, you're talking about like a chop bull or blah blah blah, you know, like blah 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 blah, those moves. But Jack Sawyer was just power, and like I said, more of a bull and club move guy. So who knows, with Jack Sawyer, high floor player that doesn't really fade. He'll give you everything every play. He's kind of a boring watch, but in a good way. And we'll see how his hands and pass rush develops for 2024. And I think if that takes a step up, we could be seeing him above Mykel Williams even on this list at the end when all said and done, because I do like my high floor players. And if Mykel Williams doesn't really improve on a whole lot, I can see him maybe dipping down the board below Jack Sawyer when all said and done. Ashton Gillotte, the defensive end for Louisville, heading into his senior year as well. We just talked about one in Jack Sawyer. We've got another one here. He's also pretty big, listed at 6'3", 275. He's big in a different way than Jack Sawyer is. But just like Sawyer, he is big, strong, and one of those guys off the edge that can play some 3-tech and actually have no trouble there. He was able to match any blocker he saw at the college level when you're talking about strength or holding up against. And like I said, could even slide inside and play some 3-tech and see little trouble there and excel in that role. And watching up to the point where I got to Ashton, I just didn't see any that were really like great against the run or anything, but he can actually defend the run. There's effort and block shedding in Ashton's game to help him against the run in those sort of scenarios, and he did it really well. I wouldn't say at like the highest of highs level wise in the whole class, but I do like Ashton Gillotte in the way that his run defense looked compared to some of the other depth guys in this class. He moves pretty well for his size and mostly stood out in his high effort plays when he's chasing someone down and sticking with it through the whistle. And that's something that we kind of talk about, like high motor, but not that really the same here. I think that the effort is good, and I think that he can chase a run towards the outside, or like even a bubble screen or something like that he might see is in reach for him, and he gets there. And like I said, kind of stood out speed wise on some of those sort of plays. It's not like something I'm saying again where holy ultra bend, or this guy's like Nic Scourton where he moves not like a human. I think he struggled to generate some good power against jump sets. He didn't have much time to really build momentum. And if you guys don't know what a jump set is, it's where the tackle approaches you and jumps like basically into your pads instead of vice versa. Instead of him taking a vertical set, which the tackle then drops back into his kick step, the opposite, they go into you and pause. Ashton Gillotte would you know, maybe get walled off or something. You know, he just didn't handle it that well, I guess. The eyes in the backfield were a bit spotty. He'd overrun the quarterback and maybe not see the ball carrier until it's like too late and he's too far past the player, the runner. Like I said, there's times where he just does overrun, kind of gets past to the point where it's just it's too late to get any action in the play or anything. Another guy that's pretty one-dimensional. It's all about getting through the tackle. It's rarely any speed rushing or speed rusher in his game. There's not really a whole lot of that, and like I said, more one-dimensional in terms of pass rush plan. But when you're looking at the way that he plays against the run and then the pass, like, you can kind of make that argument for him. He is actually one of the biggest edge guys in this class, and he plays that part well. He does everything you'd think for someone listed that big. So didn't really fall short of any expectations and really didn't excel much either. I just do like Ashton Gillotte as someone that's very solid, and like I said, kind of plays the part as one of the bigger edge rushers in this class and plays that part well. Now we'll talk about Kaimon Rucker, one of my favorite players in this entire class. It's North Carolina's senior edge rusher, heading into his senior years, of course. 6'2", 265 is where he's listed at. Maybe a reason he is a little bit further down this list, but very fun player to watch. And a part of his game that I also really like, the natural leverage being a little lower to the ground, especially against really tall tackles. You know, naturally you would lower your pads to get inside of theirs, but instead he doesn't really have to do that. He's got that natural leverage being a little bit lower, maybe better center of gravity, and then just being able to pop right out of the snap and pop right off the line into the lineman's pads. And like I said, it really helps against some of those taller tackles, and in terms of power as well. He's got quick, feisty, and very solid hands. He works his hands when working the outside shoulder, or if he's shedding a block, or if he's off the line quick. When you're working outside, obviously you want to try to like bat the hands down and try to get outside without them being able to reach out and maybe get a reach on you, grip strength, whatever you want to say. You just want to make sure that doesn't really get or they don't have that opportunity. So you want to try to attack, but also you can round it enough to the point where you can still make a play on the quarterback instead of just running outside of them. So he has to use his hands in those sort of situations. And when he's shedding a block, batting the hands, or just kind of moving him out of the way, or moving himself, or moving the tackle, however you want to say it. And when he's quick off the line, he's got the jump or something, and maybe the tackle sets his arms up pretty early or flashes his hands, and Kaimon Rucker says nope and bats him down. He's really good, and like I said, quick, feisty, and solid hands. High effort, throw his body around, never miss a snap type of player. When you're talking about Kaimon Rucker, that's a reason I said, like, kind of just really fun to watch. Like I said, kind of just throws his body around. He tries to do as much as he can. High effort player, and never really misses a snap either, unless he's hurt or really gassed. And he's probably got the deepest bag, but like just overall really deep bag. He's got so many moves on standby, if you will. He also uses a few other moves that looked really good, just didn't use them as frequently, maybe just didn't execute as well with them. So maybe just kind of kept him up his sleeve, and if he felt like bringing it out or seemed like a good situation or scenario, do it. So Kaimon Rucker, I keep making that mistake. He like I said, deep bag, a lot of good with his hands, but also at the pass rush plan. Heading to the downside now, it's just the physical build. He's quite short. Honestly, he doesn't even look 255, though he's listed at 265 in this upcoming season. Maybe he does look a little bit different this year than last, but I don't know. He didn't even look, like I said, 255 last year, and maybe he's just really well built, which I wouldn't doubt because of the type of player Kaimon is. So I don't know, but the physical build overall just isn't really that imposing. There's plays when he just can't do much and gets got pretty quick, fires off the line, maybe lends his shoulders or something and really can't maneuver past the tackle. And like I said, kind of just gets trapped. Maybe the grip strength's too good, whatever the situation he's seeing is. Maybe it's just too good right away. And like I said, it happens pretty quick sometimes. I've seen him actually lose blocks to tight ends. Not only that, he's been put on the ground by a tight end, and that kind of comes with the last two things we've said, where he gets got right off the line, and his physical build and how short, and maybe he doesn't even look or play up to his size. And when you've been put on the ground or lose blocks in the run game to a tight end, just not really, you know, that fun to watch, or something that really strikes you as something imposing or attractive in terms of a prospect you have at hand, not something you want to see. And especially one of my favorites, I'd love for him to be higher on this list, but also the realistic side of me knows that it's not really faring well when you're looking at some of the downside. Some reps straight off the line, he'll just lend his tackle, or lend the pads to his or to the tackle he's against or lined up across. Like I said, there's times where he just can't really do much, and some of those plays are the ones where he just says, hey, here you go. Maybe he knows he's a little bit lower, and there are plays where he just kind of stands up right off the snap and maybe doesn't try as hard to drive back or whatever the deal is. But Kaimon, for frick's sake. He's like a really strong and well-built linebacker coming off the edge. He's crazy quick. His hands are really quick too, and he's got a deep bag of pass rush moves and a little bit more polish in the senior part of his game. Like, I would have guessed that he has more experience because of the way he executes some of them as well. So you can see some of the seniority in his game as well. Kaimon Rucker, someone I'm really fond of, and I hope can start to narrow down some of the stuff that he's not so great at, but the stuff that he is. I mean, he's looking at a really good year college wise. We'll just see what he turns out to be as like a prospect and where the consensus lands on Kaimon. And this is going to be a long one. This guy is a lot further down than probably a lot of you guys expect, but it's Tuimoloau, for frick's sake, can't even say his name. The Ohio State pass rusher, heading into his senior year, 6'5", 269 pounds, pretty big. The movement skills and speed rushing ability Tuimoloau has and displays are really impressive for his size and used more often than I'd expect heading in. There's definitely glimpses of great power, and I've already mentioned the speed in his game, and he shows the ability to use both and excel with both. And like I said, only flashes of like really great power or the way that he can convert some of his speed that we've already talked about into some of that power. He also seems to have a nose for the ball and the ability to read and react in real time to the play at hand, and that's something pretty important, especially in run defense, is to have that ability to sniff one out. And we kind of talked about Abdul Carter and the way that he could bring linebacker instincts and how that can help him against the run off the edge. And Tuimoloau kind of has a little bit of that when I'm talking about kind of the nose for the ball, ability to read and react, all in the same type of not split second, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like right off the line, it's a little tough to process everything. He's actually also pretty high effort when you're talking about in range to make a difference in a play. He'll try everything to make that play happen or make and seal, close, whatever you want to say on that play when he thinks and knows he might be in range. And like I said, to make a difference in the play, to maybe stop a runner short of the first down marker, he'll try to do everything he can in his power and give it all he's got to make a game altering play. And now we'll look at some of the downside, which I'm gonna get hate for this, I know it. I thought I'd be coming in and seeing a dominant power rusher, but instead I see someone that occasionally uses power that can get blocked out of the play by tight ends, for F's sake. By tight ends, we just talked about it with Kaimon Rucker at 6'2", 265. He's got another 5 pounds, and like I said, I don't even think Kaimon Rucker played at 255. Like, it maybe looked like he was 250. So Tuimoloau out nearly 3 inches of birdie, 20 pounds on him, whatever it might be. 20 pounds. No, mathematics, hard to do, but definitely not what you'd expect heading in. Looking on paper at Tuimoloau and looking at the sort of player he would be on paper and then watching the tape, not what I expected at all. There's times when he's using speed and I don't understand why he's not using power. He's trying to finesse his way through a blocker, and that's a big part of his game, is some of that speed to his game, right? You want to do that. So attack a shoulder, maybe stutter, try to fly back inside, catch him by surprise, maybe work outside back to inside. But no, instead he's trying to like bat his way or spin his way through the blocker, where you should be using like we said, the bull rush. There's like moves you can use to get through a tackle. I don't know why, but he tries his spin a lot, and even when he's not spinning, he'll somehow still end up with his back to the blocker. And this was something that stood out, and I was like 3 games in, and I was like, I'm like, how is this still happening? And obviously it wasn't a fluke the first 3 times I saw it. The fact that his back will literally end up to the tackle, and the tackle literally just be holding him with his back there. Like, I just not something that's really ideal for a bigger edge rusher, especially. He finds himself out of the play so much because all he's doing is attacking and chasing the outside shoulder. He puts himself behind the play because he's trying to attack upfield. He's trying to get around the offensive tackle he's seeing at 6'5", 270, by the way, and just overruns the play, gets himself out of range to keep himself within the structure of even the pocket, and to keep himself to keep a foot in the race, if you will. He just puts himself behind the play too far, and the fact that he can just fly outside play after play without really realizing that he just doesn't really have a chance. Or if they're doing really well against the run, he'll still try to attack the outside shoulder. We talked about it earlier, how a tight end could block him, and I actually thought tight ends were able to dictate and even drive him upfield. JT's anchor wasn't what I was expecting, and proved proved time after time that it wasn't so great, and maybe played a little bit lighter or tried to avoid them in a way that wasn't really conventional. Maybe try to outrun them backwards and then pounce when it was time. But there were times where tight ends were literally able to man-to-man assignment up on JT Tuimoloau, and they excelled. JT, like I said, his anchor wasn't anything that I was expecting, and it was a lot different. I was totally surprised after watching the first game. He's not the player I expect after hearing about his power and the size and how he plays big. He looked more like a damn speed rusher out there. The more I watched, the more I saw both speed and power, but still not the type of player I was expecting to see at all. I had to watch the most games on Tuimoloau because I was honestly just surprised, and I thought I had watched a couple of bad games, so I kept going, and the bad just kept persisting, if you will. It was just there game after game, and like I said, I just thought I picked maybe a couple or even a few bad games to start with, and I just kept going, and I'm like, no, that's just the player that he is. So he finds himself further down this list. Maybe he's just not the type of player I like, but one that works. I just, it's unexplainable why I'm not really a fan of JT Tuimoloau right now, but maybe that opinion changes over the season. I don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you. Next guy we'll talk about is a Florida transfer headed to Ole Miss. It's Princely Umanmielen, however you say that. Might be mispronouncing it, and no offense, I guess. But heading into his senior year, listed at 6'5", 255 pounds. And at that size, he's a damn good athlete. His movement skills for how big he is and how lengthy his frame is are definitely impressive in the way that he can kind of maneuver the way around. Like I said, kind of his long leg. Like, he looks pretty, not thin, but you see guys that are, like I said, kind of just have like a lengthy frame, whether it's a little leggy or, you know, long arms. It just kind of impressed me with how well he moved. Princely is more of a speed rusher with little polish, and we'll hit more on that, but it already works. He's working with just kind of pure talent and kind of going out there and using what he has with, like I said, not really a whole lot of technicality or there's little polish in his game, but the fact that it already works, he's producing and he's putting numbers up on the stat sheet, whether it's QB pressures or however, whatever number you want to look at, it's working. It's at the college level, it works. So I don't know if he could go play in the NFL right now and start and produce the same, but you never know. He actually saw some good coverage snaps with Florida and gained experience covering tight ends one-on-one and even just playing in lower zones. Maybe it was the flat. Maybe he's a QB spy sort of player that, you know, maybe the quarterback had a tendency to fly up the middle or something. They diagnosed that and they're like, hey, Princely, you know, go get on that. And he did it well. So I think Princely Umanmielen had a few unconventional roles with Florida, and just definitely gained some experience doing some stuff that is a little bit different and maybe helped him other places. And we're already to the cons or the bad of Princely Umanmielen. But there's very little polish in Princely's game. He's heading into his senior year and still looks very raw. And the fact that I saw he was heading into his senior year, I repeat, just kind of surprised me because of the way that he plays. And like I said, there's no polish. He's still really raw. And heading into his senior year, I mean, it's a little interesting. While the rest of his teammates are playing correctly, he's out there using talent and just lining up as like a stand-up outside backer, flying off the edge, seeing if he could push the guy around. If not, we'll try to juke around him or run towards the inside, maybe cut it back or whatever. He just didn't really play a more conventional role along with the rest of his teammates. I thought it was really funny. Everyone else is in the same stance, and then there's just him on the outside. He looks just really tall and up over the tackle, and like I said, just playing an outside backer role. His pass rush moves aren't developed and barely even a thing. He has no real go-to move or anything that stood out in terms of you have guys, and we mentioned this, they have their go-to moves. JT Tuimoloau's spin move, though I don't really understand them, but whatever. He didn't really have any of that. He didn't have a single move that stood out and was noteworthy. He actually lacks some power too. He doesn't use a whole lot of power in his rush, and when he does, there's no leverage or good hand usage, and honestly, he just lacks a strong base against the run and overall, like just lacks a good base as a whole. As a 6'5", 255 human being, he wasn't really that strong. When he used it in his rush, in his pass rush, there was no leverage really. You know, he's still lengthy and had the ability to do that, and the hand usage wasn't really great enough to put himself in that sort of position anyways. Kind of interesting. And then I saw a quote from Princely saying that Florida said to basically go out there and use his talent. They just said do that. and it makes a lot of sense when looking at the tape. Umanmielen is so raw, but such a good athlete and someone I could see taking massive strides with Ole Miss in 2024. Obviously, I really hope he does. He has tools and whatnot, but finding himself this far down the list, he could be prone to flying up this list, much like the other guys in this class. And there's also guys that can fall down this list that we've already talked about. So Princely Umanmielen, kind of make it or break it year to me, honestly. And we'll see how he does in this upcoming season with Ole Miss. Next guy we'll talk about, a huge SOB. It's Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, heading into his senior year, listed at 6'7", 282 pounds, and utilizes his length for his pass rush and to hold leverage. I think he understands that he is a bit massive and kind of sticks to it because it works well, especially against the caliber of competition he's seeing in college. And like I said, utilizes it well in multiple ways. He really likes his chop move, whether it's a cross chop or a normal chop. He even adds a little jump in there. And another thing we'll bring up here, we talked about his length for his pass rush, but it also works for that move specifically. The long arms work really well with the chop. It just looked really effective, but also pretty natural to use that move at that length. You know, with the way he was using it, it looked like I said, he liked it, he used it well, and it was very effective. And at 6'7", he bends and gets low around the edge. Sure, he's a big dude, but he can still get lower and lower his pads, display some impressive bend around the edge. Something you did not expect me to say, I guarantee it. I don't know how he does it, but still somehow gets a little bit lower and lowers, like I said, the pads and displays some sort of bend around the edge, which, I mean, take it as you will. 6'7" bending down, still like 6'4" normal. So however you want to look at it. And speaking of looking at it, we'll look at some of the downside here. Not much of a run defender despite his tremendous size advantage. Some guys like this, you know, we talked about even Ashton Gillotte, how he can line up as 3-tech and be effective in the run game. Not the same here for Landon Jackson, and the fact that he really didn't do much in the run. He'll run around the tackle and the play. There's some plays when he just runs too far outside, ends up behind the entire play. All the action, everything is just behind him because he overruns the tackle on the outside shoulder. And he also lacks the sort of power you'd expect seeing his measurements, especially, you know, 6'7", 282. You put some pieces together here, you're like, oh, okay, power, got it. He wins more speed and length than he does any power. So little unexpected tidbit there for Landon Jackson, and something you maybe expect to develop over maybe this offseason, hopefully. Off the edge and around the outside, he actually lowers his pads well. Whenever he lines up anywhere else, it's a real different story. He's not really doing a whole lot, you know, maybe all the way out 9, a wide 9 I'm talking about. Maybe he does well. Maybe you slide him a little further inside, maybe he does well. Any farther inside than that, it's, like I said, a little bit of a different story. He doesn't really do that well. Maybe he has a feeling that he needs to go through and maybe use a little bit of a different, you know, maybe even get in position to swat the football. Who knows? But it's a different story. He's real lengthy, and not too many people are built like him and move like him, making that kind of the intangibles for Landon Jackson. Another reason he has a foot in this race. No one's really built like that, and like I said, moves like that. So Landon Jackson, maybe a big year inbound. If so, another guy that could move up this list. If not, maybe another guy that can move down this list. You never really know some of these guys, and Landon Jackson just finds himself here pretty much in no man's land because he's kind of a hard projection. But I don't know, I'm hoping he makes strides because he is such a unique human, and I would love to see him do well. And I think he actually has the promise to dominate college football, but we'll have to see what he does in this in his senior year at Arkansas. We're done with our top 10, and 11 and 12 was actually, well, 11 was Patrick Payton, the defensive end for Florida State. For his sake, I hope he's up to 254 pounds and that's not just something that FSU's typing in on their website. He struggles in the run, but his hand movements when he's rushing the passer looks really good. I hope he can diversify the moves in his arsenal and improve against the run for the 2024 season. For his speed, balance, length, he's a full speed rusher. He looks every bit of 6'5". I really hope he can progress and really take steps and strides this year. And if not, he still has another year, redshirt junior. So maybe Patrick Payton, someone we look at for summer scouting next year, because if he doesn't take those, I don't know how much of a real great draft prospect other than the intangibles, and maybe a defensive line coach falls in love with him or whatever. But Patrick Payton, like I said, for his sake, I hope he makes some strides and really has bulked up to 254 pounds. And for Dani Dennis-Sutton, the Penn State junior, or heading into his junior year, 6'5", 270, lengthy, but also another guy, if he can impress in terms or progress in terms of pass rush plan and keep utilizing his hands and length, I think he can develop some more consistency. And if so, we could be looking at a guy that maybe jumps a few of these guys, but not too many. I think he uses his length well and prefers to play extended. He's impressive, just not like really alien movements there. He has some great reps and shows flashes of good edge play, but he's basically boom to bust, boom or bust on a rep to rep basis. And sometimes you'd expect him to maybe do a little bit more and ends up kind of just disappointing. So Dani Dennis-Sutton falls short of the top 10 as well. And that's pretty much all the guys I watched. And that'll be it for this video, but exciting times on the channel. We're only progressing. This is 3 straight daily uploads if this one comes out on time, which most likely will. If not, then I probably am in the hospital or something dumb happened. So either way, besides the point, if you guys enjoyed, go ahead, leave a like, go down, subscribe, go watch the past content on the channel. I'm pretty sure you would like it if you like this one. Like I said, I've done all of the positions up to this point. Every single offensive position and defensive line was my latest video. So if you guys enjoyed, again, make sure to stick around, watch any more of my videos, and come back for more, because I'll look to be posting a lot about the 2025 class and hopping on the rookie stuff around the NFL. And once again, that'll be it for me. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Deuces.